Hi, welcome to the Hungarian Living Podcast. I'm your host, Elizabeth Sabo-Voss. Our goal is to discover, celebrate, and share Hungarian heritage and encourage you to do it too. We'll touch on food, travel, history, music, and language, and share stories from our listeners. We're glad you're here. This is a podcast where we'll encourage you to dig deeper to learn about your Hungarian heritage in a variety of ways. We'll have thought-provoking conversations and share resources. So whether you know a little or a lot about being Hungarian, this is the place to be. Welcome to Hungarian Living. I am here today with my friend and tour partner, Andrea from Gödöllő, Hungary. See ya, Andrea. It is great to have you here.
Hi, Liz. I'm very happy to join in a talk with you again.
Well, today we are going to talk about some of the most significant drinks of the Hungarians, and there is no better place to start than with Palinka. Palinka is often referred to as a fruit brandy in Hungary, but a better explanation is fruit spirit. European fruit brandies are different from U.S. brandies, and I would even go as far as to say that when it's in its pure form, it is similar to moonshine in the sense that it is strong and colorless. And while alcohol production is really regulated in the U.S., it is not as tightly regulated in the European Union and definitely not in Hungary. Palinka is the name of the Hungarian fruit spirit. This title, Palinka, is protected. This product is produced exclusively by the alcoholic fermentation and distillation of fleshy fruits or most of such fruit, berries, and vegetables with or without stones. I had to look up that definition. These fruits are grown in Hungary, and it is processed in Hungary from start to finish. That is the only way it can be called Palinka. If you have spent time looking for Palinka in the United States and wondered why the good Hungarian people you know aren't making it, they are. There are fruit spirits being made in the United States. We have a couple of distilleries in the US, and the owners are Hungarian. They even use a Hungarian still, and they use the above process, but they cannot call their product Palinka due to the regulations. But until you can regularly get Palinka from Hungary, you should visit these guys and get their fruit and vegetable spirits. We'll have links to these places in the show notes. So, Andrea, the Hungarian way of saying it, can you give us a little background on Palinka? Why is it considered a Hungaricum or Hungaricum?
Hungaricum, we say.
Hungaricum.
Hungaricum, okay. Yes. So, the production of the Pálinka in the current sense began in the middle of the 18th century. And the variety of the fruits used for it was expanding. In 1850, a Pálinka tax was introduced in Hungary. And from this year on, we can talk about reliable records about Pálinka production. So based on this data, in the 1910s, Hungary had 860 working alcohol factories, 30 of which were on industrial scale. In 1913, the Hungarian alcohol production became acknowledged in the world. So in 1934, apricot Pálinka was referred as a world-famous Hungarian drink. So the Act 30 of 1938 fundamentally changed the situation of Pálinka production in Hungary. From this time on, alcohol production, importation, and sale was exclusively commanded by the state. The regulation of Palinka production didn't change significantly until 1951, when during the socialist times, distilleries were managed collectively as wine and fruit spirit distilleries. Production quantity was restricted. In a law of 1982, the state itself abolished its alcohol monopoly. Due to this law, individuals were allowed to produce Pálinka from fruit and set up distilleries, but with a maximum capacity of 500 liter pots. The most significant change was that after a long time, expertise became a requirement at last. In 1965, there were more than 1,000 distilleries all around Hungary. By the time of the change of the regime in the 1990s, its number dropped to 800, from which time on, only approximately 200 privately owned distilleries have been operating. So, due to the insufficient technical equipment, the lack of experts, and poor quality raw materials, it was impossible to make high quality palinka. When this wonderful drink was just to disappear from the scene, some enthusiastic people came out from nowhere, the ones who have been producing the top quality Palinka ever since. So fortunately, they have restored the old reputation of the Palinka, and we can say that it is world famous uh, again. Yeah.
Okay. So you're saying that prior to a certain time, there were no home distilleries, or they weren't acknowledged, or they weren't regulated, or I'm thinking homes have been probably making Palinka for a long time,
Yes.
but it sounded like they weren't officially allowed to until a
Yeah.
certain time. Okay.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Mhm.
So who is allowed to make Palinka now, and have you and your family ever made it?
Yes. So panika making at home has a long history in Hungary. Due to the current regulations, everybody can make panika at home, but of course with quantity regulations. Uh, so 85 liter, 42 degrees, or 72 liter, 50 degrees panika can be produced yearly by a private person or a family. So today you can buy all the quality equipment in the special shops for your home making palinka. So as a teenager in the 1980s, I remember that we had lots of fruit trees in our garden. My mother fought for them to prepare delicious jams, but my father wanted them to prepare palinka, of course. So it was a typical story in many Hungarian families. So and but at that time it was not allowed to make palinka at home. So it was funny that my father always said that I'm visiting my laboratory, and we all knew that he has something to do with his palinka in the backside
Aha.
of the garden. Yeah. So at that time, and even today, homemade palinka is often made of the rest, the fallen fruits. So they are that are not good enough to eat or to prepare a jam, but they are good to prepare a palinka from it. So fortunately, it is situation changed, and now more and more families prepare really good quality palinka, select the best fruits. Even my mother also collecting the nice quality fruits in the garden, in the fruit garden, and she takes them to a professional distillery. So she doesn't make it at home, but takes the fruit to the distilleries.
Well, I have had her Palinka, and it's very good. So she does make some good selections of fruit.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
And
I'm pleased to hear.
what different flavors does she make?
She makes apple palinka, apricot palinka, peach sometimes, plum palinka, so and sometimes mixed, where she doesn't have the quantity enough from one kind of fruit. She is mixing it. So yeah.
Okay. And what would you say are the most typical flavors of Palinka?
So the most typical flavors are the plum, the apricot, the apple, pear, cherry. So these are the most typical flavors.
So I remember that we had a Palinka tasting dinner a few years ago on one of our tours, and I would have never thought that it is important to so carefully pair Palinka with a meal, but it was a lot of fun. And so Andrea, which are the best, most famous distilleries?
So I like, for example, the products of the Hogarth distillery, the Nobilis distillery, the Gyulai distillery. I can list many, many more, of course. So today we have, fortunately, a very big choice of distilleries and excellent Palinkas in Hungary. So on our culinary tours, we always visit at least one distillery. You know it. We learn the process, how a tasty Palinka is made, sample some types, sometimes with a delicious dinner, of course, or a delicious meal.
And so talk to us about how Palinka is best tasted. I'm sure there's some rules that go along with how to have the ultimate
Oh, yes.
Palinka tasting.
So the key rule to proper Palinka consumption, to taste it at room temperature. Because cooling of the Palinka, with cooling of the Palinka, it loses the essence we drink it for, its scent and fruitiness. Palinka is best enjoyed if tasted slowly, sipping. Palinka may both be consumed before meals as aperitif or after meals as digestive. The glass used to drink Palinka should be wide at the bottom and narrow at the rim to lead the scents to the nose. But do not forget the dry test after tasting Palinka. Warm up the empty glass with your hands for 4 or 5 minutes after having drunk the Palinka already. The warmth of your hand will leave intensive, pleasant aromas to your nose. So, and Palinka may also be used to prepare dishes, shakes, cocktails, cakes, giving a special pleasant flavor and aroma to the specialties of the Hungarian cuisine.
And I think I've also seen that there's been Palinka flavored Szaloncukkor, the
Yeah, of
Hungarian
course.
Christmas candy. So
Yes, we love it.
it could be in anything, I suppose. So
Oh, yes.
it, let's talk a little bit about the flavors. What are typical flavors of Palinka?
Mhm, mhm. So, as we have already mentioned, Pálinka must be produced from fruits found in Hungary. So it gives lots of fruits at the Pálinka maker's disposals, of course. There are some traditional fruits that you will see more often than others. These are the barack, apricot, the pear, körte, plum, silva, apple, alma, cheresznyé, cherry. These fruits are also accompanied by close cousins such as Vilmos körte, William's pear. It's a favorite of many people. The birch, the quince in English, uh, peach, őszi barack, sour cherry, it's a megy, pálinka, and that is only getting started. There are many, many more. So the pálinka made of different berries needs more work and time, for example, to prepare. When harvesting, for example, elderberry, berries are destemmed and crushed, just as in case of grape berries. On top of that, berries are deseeded, so as the greenish vegetal notes of the seeds shouldn't conflict with the fruitiness of the palinka. Thanks to this unique character of the elderberry, tasting of this palinka is a real pleasure. So, and there is a special palinka called Borzog. I don't know if you have heard about it. It is made in northern Hungary in Nógrád County from Danewort fruit. I hope it's the English name of this fruit, Borzog. It's quite expensive and it's a rarity and not
Mhm.
widely known in Hungary. There are people who love it. There are people who hate it, but it's really very unique. The Borzog.
So
I yeah.
I was gonna say I'll have to look that up because it's not even the English word is not familiar to me. But what does the fruit look like? Do you know?
This
Have you
is
had the
also
fruit?
yes, actually, this fruit can be found by the roads or on fields, and it's growing wild, and there are lots of small berries, and some people say that these berries are poisonous, but it is not, of course, because it, if Palinka can be made of it and it's really expensive and delicious, then it's not poisonous.
Right.
But some people are afraid to drink it, but you can drink it safely, no problem.
Okay.
Borzog.
Well, we'll have to look into that, and once I figure out what that is, we'll put a link in the show notes.
Oh yes.
Or I'll put links in the show notes to explain that a little bit better. So, Andrea, what's your favorite flavor?
So my favorite flavor is apricot, maybe. Yes, I love apricot. I love the fruit itself. So, and I had a apricot fruit tree in my garden. It's a very sensitive fruit. Only every second, third year we had a good harvest of it. So because when it is too cold, in springtime, and the flowers are frozen, then you will never see a nice apricot on your tree in summer. So I think my favorite flavor is apricot. Yes, it's traditional. Yeah.
Okay. Well, I love trying the unusual ones, but I must say that my favorite Palinka is one that is shared with family and friends. I especially love when I'm visiting my relatives and the tiny Palinka cups come out at breakfast to start the day. A little bit of Palinka here and there helps me to be a little more brave when it comes to speaking Hungarian. So,
of course, it helps. I'm sure.
It definitely helps. Too much Palinka is not helpful, but just a little bit helps. So, let's talk a little bit about Fröccs. Andrea, can you explain what Fröccs is and how it came to be?
Of course. So it's very actual now in summer. So when the weather gets hot in Hungary, Fröccs season is on. Fröccs, which translates as a spritzer, is a refreshing mixture of soda water and wine. It is a typical summer drink in Hungary. So we say that drinking Fröccs is the best prescription to beat the heat.
I would agree.
Oh, yeah.
So, who invented Fröccs, or how did that happen? And then you talked about soda water. And when was soda water invented, and when was it produced on a big scale?
Oh, yes. So you have to know that soda water is not the same as mineral water, because it is simple water that contains carbon dioxide, mostly without any minerals or vitamins or other ingredients. So even though soda water has already existed before, it couldn't have been produced in bigger amounts due to the lack of production technology. Then it was Ányos Jedlik, he invented the machine called in Latin the apparatus acidularis, the sour water device, making bulk manufacturing possible. But who was him? This great Hungarian inventor was born in 1800s as István Jedlik. At the age of 17, he joined the Benedict order and got the name Anianus, in Hungarian Ányos, so we call him Jedlik Ányos. From then on, he only lived for religion and science. Furthermore, he was the member of the Hungarian Academy of Sciences and also the father of the dynamo and the electric motor, the electric engine. He considered himself mainly a teacher and thought about inventing as a hobby. So, but we are very thankful for him for making the soda water industrialized.
Sure. Well, and it's interesting. There are trucks that come and deliver soda water to families.
Oh, yes.
That's not something we typically see in the US at all. So, which wines are best for a Fröccs?
So, yes, a Fröccs is usually made of white wine, but sometimes from rosé. It's quite fashionable today. A fail-safe option is a young, white, which is mildly fruity and provides vitality and sharpness. So the key is finding the balance between bubbles and wine, with neither one stealing the show from each other.
Okay.
So spritzers are still big sellers at cheap pubs with no-name wines. But in Hungary, the general rule is where there is wine, there is Fröccs as well. So, and there are plenty of places in Budapest today to explore the drink in many creatively named variations of the Fröccs, of course.
Yeah, so let's talk about those because I know that there's a lot of different options and they're based on how much wine or how much water
Mhm. Yeah, it's
is.
exactly.
So what are a couple of the I know there's a Hosszú lépés.
So there is quite a lot of. I know approximately 15 different types
Okay.
of Fröccs. I list only some or some
Mm-hmm.
of them. So
Sure.
the most typical are the Kis Fröccs, Nagy Fröccs. Kis Fröccs, it's a small Fröccs. It's 1 deciliter wine plus 1 deciliter soda. The Nagy Fröccs, the big Fröccs, is 2 deciliter wine and 1 deciliter soda. And for example, there is it's interesting. The Schoher Fröccs is a stingy Fröccs, 1 deciliter wine plus 9 deciliter soda. So
Oh
almost
wow.
no wine in
Right.
it. Yes, and there is a special one. There is a special one that is we call Újházi Fröccs, named for the late 18th, 19th century actor Ede Újházi. It is made of wine and juice from homemade fermented cucumbers, the kovászos uborka. We were talking about it
Oh.
In a former podcast already. Yes. Yeah, so there are really a lot of different Fröccs types. And traditionally, in Hungary, the Fröccs is served in functional water glasses, but young people and fancy restaurants today prefer wine glasses to serve Fröccs today. So, yeah.
Okay. Well, now I'm thirsting. I think if we're discussing these drinks, we should be sampling them. But well, I do have a little Unicum, and so I'm all set for our next conversation because let's talk a little bit about Unicum. I remember trying Unicum for the first time over 20 years ago, and I wasn't really that impressed. And but as time has gone by, I've really grown to love it. One of my favorite recent finds in Budapest is the Zwak Museum and Distillery. It's a great tour. It's absolutely worth the visit, and of course, there's samples at the end. So, Andrea, why don't you describe what kind of drink Unicum is?
Yes, of course. So, Unicum is a Hungarian herbal liquor or bitters drunk as a digestive or aperitif. The liquor is today produced by the Zvak according to a secret formula of more than 40 herbs, and the drink must be aged in oak casks. So this is the shortest description of the
Mm-hmm.
Unicum.
Mm-hmm. Can you explain a bit about the origin and the history of Unicum and, maybe when it was first produced?
Yes, of course. Yes. So Unicum, this we call Unicum, was created by Dr. Joseph Zwak, the royal physician to the Habsburg court, for Emperor Joseph II in 1790. He offered the Habsburg monarch a sip of unicum as a remedy for indigestion. So a legend would have it that the royal comment was, Dr. Zwack, das ist ein Unicum. This is an unicum. So giving this herb liquor its name. So in 1840, the family founded G. Zwack and Company, the first Hungarian liquor manufacturer. By the early 1900s, the Zwack Company had become one of the largest distilleries in Central Europe, producing and exporting over 200 liquors and spirits. Yeah.
Oh, wow, that's pretty extensive.
Mm.
So let's talk a little bit about the Zwack family. They have built quite an empire, but it wasn't easy. They've also experienced some difficulties too.
Oh, yes. So it's a very long and adventurous story of this family. I go back to the Second World War. So during the Second World War, the Zwack factory was damaged and the production stopped, of course, during the bombing of Budapest. After the war, the factory was nationalized in 1948 by the Communist Hungarian Working People's Party. The Zwack family fled the country. János John Zwack, with his son Peter Zwack, the great-grandson of Joseph, was the inventor, was able to escape with the original Zwack recipe. Béla Zwack remained behind to give the communist government a fake Zwack recipe.
Oh, sneaky.
Yes, and went on to become a regular factory worker. Meanwhile, János and Peter migrated to the United States, eventually settling in the Bronx in 1949, when Peter was only 22 years ago, 22 years old. Sorry. So in 1988, just 1 year before the fall of the communism, Peter Zwack returned to Hungary and resumed production with the original Zwack formula recipe. He repurchased his family business from the Hungarian state in the summer of 1989. And by the spring of 1990, the original Zwack product was reintroduced to the Hungarian market. That same year, Peter Zwack was named Hungarian ambassador to the United States. It's interesting. Oh, yes. In 2008, Peter Zwack handed over the company's leadership to the family's sixth generation, his own children, Sándor and Isabella Zwack. So, and one of their first initiatives was to launch Zwack in the US. In 2013, the Zwack company has also launched Unicum and Unicum Plum in the US.
And so there is the original Unicum, there's Unicum Silva or Plum, and then there's the Unicom Reserve.
Yes.
And can you explain the difference between those?
Yes. So let's see the three most important types of Unicum. Although Unicum's recipe is kept secret, that much is certain. That is made of a mixture of over 40 different kinds of carefully selected medicinal herbs and spices. Its unique bittersweet taste and exclusive harmony is brought to perfection by a 6 month period of aging in oak casks. This is the Unicum, the original Unicum.
Okay.
Unicum Plum, like Unicum, it is made also from 40 different herbs and spices from 5 continents, according to a secret family recipe, which has been in the Zwack family for 230 years. So half of the herbs are distilled and half macerated in high quality corn alcohol before they are blended together and aged in oak casks. The only difference between the two Unicums is that Unicum Plum is the first herb liqueur in the world to be also aged on dried plums, which gives the new Zwack liqueur a distinctive harmony and a rounded, velvety, and fruity taste. So this is the plum, Unicum Plum.
Okay. That's my favorite.
And my favorite too. And the Unicom Reserva. So Unicom Reserva is double unique because it is aged not once but twice in two very different and special casks. The Unicum is aged first in the largest and oldest cask in the distillery, which has been in the cellars for 80 years.
Wow.
Over the decades, the wood has acquired a coating that is called black honey. it gives the Unicum still more depth and character. So in the second phase, the Unicum is put into a Tokai Asu cask, where for years this legendary wine has aged in the cellars of Tokai. So once the familiar bittersweet taste of Unicum encounters the sweetness of Tokai wine, Unicom Reserva becomes mellower, but at the same time spicy and fruity, with hints of dried apricots and the herbal, minty taste. So finally, the 2007 yes, a vintage of Tokai Asu from Dobogo Winery is blended into the Reserva to further enhance this uniquely unusual blend of flavors. Thus, Unicum Reserva combines in perfect harmony the exciting and exotic herbs with the honey essence of the Tokai wine. So
Well,
it was a long.
now that I know more about that, I'm definitely going to have to try it because I've been thinking about it. I've seen it on the tours, but and that's not what you get to taste on a tour. So I thought, oh, how good can it be? But boy, that sounds pretty good. Have you tried it?
Oh yes, it's excellent. I
Okay.
can
Okay.
tell
All
you.
right. I'll have to try it next time I'm there. So sometimes in the US, we can get something that is just called Zwak. And I think I contacted them and asked the company, is it this same thing as what you get at Hungary called Next?
Yes. So Unicum Next represent the new generation of Unicum, a new spirit. The herbal ingredients contained in the original Unicum are carefully remixed in such a way that the ingredients responsible for Unicum's trademark bitter taste are mellowed and overshadowed by hints of citrus fruits. So it is recommended to taste ice cold. So despite the cold temperature, Unicum Next can feel surprisingly warm as you swirl it around and savor its taste in your mouth. Yeah,
So, and would you say that that's a good one to start with if you're not
uh, an Unicum
accustomed?
fan. Oh yes,
So it's
yeah,
like Unicum Light,
Unicum
kind of.
Light. Yes, start with it and then go on with maybe Unicum Plum, then Unicum and Unicum Reserva. Maybe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hmm.
Well, Andrea, what fun to visit with you about these special drinks. I can't wait till I can sit with you and enjoy a face to face conversation over Palinka, Fröccs, or Unicum.
Oh,
So thank you so much for for sharing your insight on this edition of the Hungarian Living podcast. And we will talk to you again soon.
yes, it was a pleasure for me to talk to you, and I'm looking forward to the next topic of our podcast.
All right. Sounds good. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Hungarian Living is a division of Magyar Marketing, the Hungarian store, where you can find meaningful gifts with Hungarian style. Check us out at magyarmarketing.com. And special thanks to Stephen Chichek and the Animal Cannibals for the show music. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this episode of Hungarian Living, please subscribe and share this podcast with your favorite Hungarian. Check out our show notes for links to resources mentioned in this episode. If you have a question or comment, email us at podcast@hungarianliving.com. We'll catch you next time.